"Greetings, traveler. I'm glad to see you in my tavern. Here you may rest after a hard road, drink a mug of good ale, and listen to an old, honest witcher's tale, one that smells of smoke, winding roads, and silver coins." The road that led to Harnsdorf was a lonely one. It wound through the foothills, like a pale scar across the earth, hemmed in by leafless birches and the sigh of a wind that smelled faintly of snow. Geralt rode slowly, the mare beneath him snorting clouds of mist into the cold air. It was late autumn, the kind of season that made the world hold its breath before winter's long silence. A crow followed him for half the journey, circling high above, its cries echoing through the hills. Geralt eyed it once or twice. In his trade, even the habits of birds could speak of ill omens. But this one, it seemed, was simply a hungry scavenger, waiting for opportunity. By dusk, the rooftops of Harnsdorf appeared, crooked and hunched, as if the village were trying to hide from the wind. Smoke rose weakly from a few chimneys, and the distant sound of hammering drifted through the quiet, though it stopped abruptly as the Witcher approached. Villagers watched him from doorways, eyes narrowed and wary. He was used to that. Geralt dismounted before the tavern, tied Roach to a post, and stepped inside. The scent of smoke and boiled cabbage filled the room. A few men sat hunched over mugs of ale, speaking in low voices. When the Witcher entered, they fell silent. The innkeeper, a heavy-set woman with tired eyes, looked up. "Evenin'," she said cautiously. "What brings you to Harnsdorf?" "Work," Geralt replied, unbuckling his cloak. "Heard there's a contract." Her expression darkened. "Aye, the breath stealer. You'd best talk to the alderman if you're serious." Geralt raised an eyebrow. "Breath stealer?" She nodded, glancing toward the shuttered windows, as if afraid the name itself might summon something foul. "Takes the air right out of a man's chest, leaves him cold, face pale as chalk. Happens mostly near the old silver mine, east of here. No one goes near it anymore." Geralt took a seat. "How many dead?" "6. Maybe 7. Depends whether you count the ones found half alive. Coffin black bile. They don't last long." He said nothing for a while, only stared at the flames licking the hearthstones. Then, "Where do I find the alderman?" The woman wiped her hands on her apron. "Second house past the well, but he'll not be pleased to see you after sundown." "Then I'll give him reason to be." Geralt left the tavern. The evening had deepened into a chill darkness, broken only by the glow of lanterns. Dogs barked as he passed, and behind shuttered windows, voices murmured prayers. He found the alderman's house, larger than most, with smoke curling from its chimney, and knocked. After a pause, the door creaked open. A bearded man with a fur-lined vest stood there holding a candle. His eyes were ringed with sleeplessness. "Geralt of Rivia," the Witcher said simply. "I'm here about your curse." The alderman hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in. No sense talking in the cold." The room smelled of tallow and damp wood. A map of the surrounding hills lay spread across a table weighted with stones. The alderman poured 2 cups of mead, but drank only from his own. "Folks said you might come," he began. "Didn't think it'd be so soon. You've heard of the deaths?" "I have. Tell me everything." The man rubbed his face. "Started 2 months back. Miners first, those foolish enough to try digging near the old shaft. Then a hunter, then 2 shepherd boys. All found the same way. mouths open, eyes wide, like they'd been strangled by air itself. Geralt leaned forward. Where were the bodies found exactly? In the ravine by the mine, a place we call Ashen Hollow. There's a mist there at night, hangs low, won't lift till noon. Some say the mist breathes. Geralt's yellow eyes flickered. Anyone seen it happen? The alderman shook his head. No one who lived long enough to speak of it. He hesitated. There's talk that it's the curse of Lord Roderick, the one who owned the mine before it collapsed. They say his greed damned the place. Geralt frowned. He'd heard similar tales before. Spirits born of guilt, betrayal, or unburied dead. But curses tied to breath were rare and dangerous. I'll need to see the bodies, he said. You'll find them in the chapel crypt. The priest won't open it at night. Geralt stood. He will for me. Outside, the night was colder still. The moon rose through a veil of drifting cloud, casting pale light across the rooftops. Geralt made his way toward the chapel, a small stone building at the edge of the village, its bell long cracked and silent. The door creaked when he pushed it open. Inside, candles flickered weakly before a wooden altar. A priest knelt in prayer, his lips moving soundlessly. When he saw the Witcher, he froze. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. It's unholy to disturb the dead at this hour. They're already disturbed, Geralt said. Unlock the crypt. The priest hesitated, then fetched a ring of keys from his belt. Together they descended a narrow stairway. The air grew colder, heavier, each breath seeming harder to draw. 3 corpses lay on stone slabs, shrouded in linen. Geralt pulled the first covering aside. The man's face was gray, his lips blackened. His eyes bulged slightly, as though he had struggled for air even in death. Geralt examined the chest. The lungs beneath the skin looked sunken, shriveled, unnatural. He cut carefully, exposing tissue charred as if by smoke from within. The priest gagged. Saints preserve us. Not saints, Geralt muttered. Something else. He covered the body and stood. The air in the crypt felt thick, oppressive, pressing against his throat. For a moment it seemed as though something unseen drew at his breath. Then it was gone. Geralt turned toward the stairs. Seal this place, he said. No prayers, no candles. I'll handle it. When he stepped outside again, the wind had died. The village slept uneasily under a sky heavy with stars. Somewhere far off, a wolf howled. Geralt looked toward the east, where the black mouth of the old mine gaped beyond the hills. He adjusted his sword belt, feeling the familiar weight of silver at his hip. Breath stealer, he murmured. Let's see what name you truly wear. Then he walked into the night. The night had deepened by the time Geralt left the village behind. The moon, half veiled by cloud, hung over the hills like a pale coin. Frost glittered faintly upon the heather, crunching beneath Roach's hooves as he rode toward the east. In the distance, the black silhouette of the abandoned mine rose against the stars, a gaping wound in the earth. Geralt rode in silence, the steady rhythm of hooves and the creak of leather his only companions. The air grew colder the closer he came, and soon a low mist began to creep from the ravine below, spreading like breath upon a mirror. It rolled over the stones, thick and silent, swallowing sound. The Witcher dismounted, patted Roach's neck, and left her tethered to a dead tree. Stay, he murmured. The mare snorted softly in reply. He drew his steel sword, though he knew it might not be enough. The mist thickened as he descended the slope, and with it came a faint whispering, a sound just beyond hearing. like the slow intake of a breath. The Witcher crouched, eyes narrowing, signs of witch-light glinting faintly from his medallion. The entrance to the mine yawned before him, timber beams warped with age, chains hanging like spider webs from their frames. A sign, half-rotted and weather-worn, hung askew above the entrance. The words, Roderick Silver Works, were still barely legible. Geralt stepped closer. The stench hit him first, damp stone, mold, and the sweet rot of decay. He knelt, brushing his fingers across the ground. The soil was blackened, as though scorched by fire. Then he found something, a set of tracks, bare feet, small, uneven, dragging as if their owner had been barely able to stand. He followed them into the darkness. The mine swallowed him whole. His Witcher's eyes adjusted to the gloom, revealing walls slick with moisture and veins of silver glinting faintly in the rock. He drew the sign of Ard, releasing a gust of air that blew aside cobwebs and dust. The passage opened into a wide chamber littered with the remnants of old tools, broken carts, and the skeletal remains of support beams, long collapsed. And there, near the far wall, something moved. Geralt stilled. The movement came again, slow, deliberate. A figure hunched over a heap of bones, long hair hanging in filthy strands. When it turned, the Witcher saw a face pale as candle wax, eyes white and gleaming with hunger. Its mouth gaped wide, lips torn, teeth sharp as needles. A grave hag. It hissed and lurched toward him with unnatural speed, claws raking through the air. Geralt sidestepped, slashing downward. Steel met flesh with a wet crunch, and the creature screamed, a sound that made the very mist quiver. It lashed out again, and he parried, driving his blade deep into its chest. The hag shuddered, then fell limp to the floor. Geralt wiped his sword clean and crouched beside the corpse. Its tongue was black, thick with residue that smelled faintly of ash and sulfur. But something else caught his eye. A charm fastened around its neck by a strip of leather. He cut it free. It was a stone, smooth and gray, etched with strange runes. The Witcher felt it pulse faintly as though alive. The markings were necromantic, crude but potent, a relic used to bind or channel spirits. He frowned. So someone's been feeding the curse. A soft noise made him turn. Not a hiss this time, but a sob, faint, echoing through the tunnels. He followed the sound cautiously, one hand on his sword. The air grew heavier, harder to breathe. The mist thickened again, curling like smoke through the beams. The tunnel opened into another chamber. There, sitting upon a rock beside a half-collapsed altar, was a man. Thin, pale, with eyes sunk deep into his skull. His clothes were once fine, but now tattered, coated in dust. He looked up as Geralt approached, and the Witcher saw fear flicker in his gaze. "Who are you?" Geralt asked. The man's voice was hoarse. "Eldrick? Eldrick Roderick?" Geralt studied him. "The son of the mine's owner." The man nodded weakly. "You shouldn't be here. The mine is cursed." "My father? He..." His breath caught, a shudder running through him. He took their lives. The miners. He sealed the tunnels with them still inside. He thought their blood would make the silver stronger. He was wrong. Geralt's expression did not change. And the curse? Eldrick swallowed. He tried to undo it, called a mage. They made a pact with something that should never have been named. When the mine collapsed, the spell broke. But not completely. The spirits still breathe through the mist. Every death feeds it. Geralt held up the runestone. This was on a grave hag near the entrance. You know what it is? Eldrick's eyes widened. The stone of ashen breath. My father used it to draw the air from the miners' lungs, to trap their dying gasps. He thought he could forge it into something powerful. But the stone feeds on life. It still does. The Witcher's medallion trembled against his chest. He turned slowly, scanning the darkness. A shadow rippled across the far wall, long, thin, almost human, but shifting like smoke. The air grew colder. Eldric's voice broke into a sob. "He's here." From the mist, a shape began to form, tall, spectral, its outline flickering like a dying flame. A man in tattered noble garb, his face obscured by a black veil, as though wrapped in the very mist that birthed him. His mouth opened, and a sound like a drawn breath filled the chamber, pulling the air from Geralt's lungs. The Witcher staggered, gasping, his chest tightening. The specter advanced, its voice a whisper that seemed to echo from everywhere at once. "Son!" Eldric screamed. Geralt drew the sign of Quen, the shimmering shield, forming around him just as the wraith's claws struck. The impact sent him reeling backward. He rolled, rose to his feet, silver sword flashing in the gloom. The wraith circled, tendrils of mist curling from its body, each pulse drawing the air from the room. Geralt's breath came short and harsh. He slashed once, twice. The blade passed through smoke. "Not yet," he hissed. "I'm not dying in a hole." He pressed his medallion to the stone, murmuring a spell. The runes upon it flared bright white, and for a heartbeat the mist recoiled. The wraith shrieked, its voice full of pain and fury, then vanished into the darkness. Silence fell. The mist thinned slightly. Geralt turned back. Eldric was gone. Only a trail of footprints led deeper into the mine. The Witcher exhaled slowly, sheathed his sword, and muttered, "So be it. Round 2, then." He picked up the runestone once more. Its light flickered faintly like a dying ember. Far above, through cracks in the earth, dawn's first light was beginning to bleed into the sky, but the mine still breathed, and Geralt of Rivia knew. The curse had only begun to stir. The pale dawn spread over Harnsdorf like a weak blessing, tinting the frost-bound hills in faint gold. Smoke rose from the chimneys, but even with the day's first warmth, the air carried unease. Word had already passed among the villagers. The Witcher had gone to the mine, and the mine had swallowed him. But Geralt of Rivia returned. He rode into the square at mid-morning, his cloak stained with ash, eyes darkened from a sleepless night. The villagers watched him from doorways, muttering prayers or crossing themselves. He dismounted before the alderman's house, tied Roach to the post, and entered without knocking. The alderman rose from his chair in surprise. "You're alive, thank the gods." "Don't." Geralt set a gray stone upon the table. The faint runes pulsed once, then went still. "Save your thanks. The curse isn't broken, but I know what it is now." The man leaned closer. "You found it?" "I found its shadow," Geralt said. "Lord Roderick's spirit haunts the mine. His son Eldric lives, or did when I left him. The curse binds them both." The alderman's brow furrowed. "Eldric? We thought he left years ago. Went mad after the collapse." "He stayed," Geralt replied, "to guard what his father left behind." He straightened, eyes cold. "And to hide his guilt." The alderman swallowed. "What must be done?" Geralt picked up the stone again, turning it in his gloved fingers. "The artifact that sustains the curse, the stone of ashen breath, must be destroyed, but it's tied to Roderick's spirit. Break one without the other, and the curse spreads." The alderman paled. "Spreads?" "To the living," Geralt said simply. "To the village. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the fire's hiss. The alderman's hand trembled as he reached for his cup. "Then you'll finish it. Whatever it takes." Geralt nodded once. "I will, but I'll need supplies. Salt, oil, 2 silver ingots, and a priest's blessing." "The priest?" "If the curse feeds on the dead, then sanctify the ground before it reaches you." The alderman hesitated. "He's frightened. He's seen what it does." "So have I," Geralt said flatly. "Tell him to be brave." By evening, Geralt stood once more at the mine's edge. The wind had risen, whistling through the ravine like a drawn breath. He set down his satchel, checked his blades, and uncorked a vial of tawny liquid. The swallow potion burned bitter on his tongue, its warmth spreading through his veins. He smeared oil along his silver sword, the kind that bit deep into wraiths and cursed things. Then scattered salt across the entrance, whispering an old elder speech charm. "To bind the air." From behind him a voice called softly, "You shouldn't return there." Geralt turned. Eldric Roderick stood among the rocks, cloak drawn tight, eyes hollow. He looked worse than before, paler, weaker, as though the curse itself were draining him. "I could say the same," Geralt replied, "but I don't think you came to stop me." Eldric lowered his head. "I came to end it. My father's sins are mine as well." "You think death will settle that?" "No." His voice was little more than a whisper. "But I can help you reach him. The mine changes after nightfall. It's alive with their breath. I know the path through." Geralt studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Lead on." They descended into the mine together, their footsteps echoing softly in the dark. The deeper they went, the thicker the mist became, until the air itself shimmered faintly, like heat over stone. The walls whispered. Sometimes words could be heard, cries, gasps, the sound of men suffocating in their own fear. Eldric walked with trembling hands, his lantern swaying. "It was here," he said, "the central chamber. My father sealed it when the miners rebelled. He said their breath would make him immortal." Geralt's expression hardened. He succeeded, just not the way he wanted. They entered a vast cavern where the ceiling disappeared into darkness. At its center stood a broken altar of black marble, veins of silver gleaming faintly beneath the soot. Upon it rested the stone of ashen breath, larger now, pulsating faintly, as though drawing breath from the air around it. Geralt felt his lungs tighten. "Don't breathe too deep," he warned. Eldric sank to his knees. "Father," he whispered, "I know you're here." The air shifted. A sound rose, a long, rattling inhalation. The mist gathered, swirling into a human shape. The figure of Lord Roderick emerged from the haze, eyes like hollow embers, mouth half open in an endless, silent gasp. Eldric's voice broke. "I came to free them." The wraith turned its gaze upon him, and when it spoke, the voice was not one but many, a chorus of the dying. "You breathe, while they do not." Geralt stepped forward, raising his sword. "Enough. Your debt is paid. Let them rest." The wraith screamed. The sound tore through the cavern, shaking dust from the ceiling. Eldric clutched his head and fell to the ground. The stone of ashen breath pulsed brighter, drawing air from the room, snuffing the lanterns one by one. Geralt muttered the sign of Yrden, a glowing circle flaring beneath his feet. The wraith struck, claws sweeping through the light, but the Witcher's blade met them with a hiss of silver. The impact flung him backward, but he rolled, came up ready and countered with another slash. The blade passed through the spirit's torso, sending fragments of mist spiraling away like ash. Still, the wraith did not fall. It reformed, its mouth widening impossibly. Inhaling. The Witcher's medallion vibrated violently. Air rushed from his lungs, and the edges of his vision darkened. He staggered, dropped to one knee. Through the haze, he saw Eldric crawl toward the altar. The young man reached for the stone, fingers trembling. "Father, forgive me," he gasped. The wraith turned sharply. "No!" Geralt seized the moment. With the last of his strength, he hurled his silver blade. It struck true, piercing the wraith's chest and pinning it to the altar. The chamber filled with a blinding light. The stone cracked, splitting down the middle. A rush of wind tore through the cavern. 1,000 breaths released at once. The wraith screamed as it dissolved into dust. The mist broke apart and vanished. Then came silence. Geralt rose slowly. Eldric lay motionless beside the shattered altar, a faint smile frozen upon his lips. The curse had taken him. With its final breath, the Witcher retrieved his sword, sheathed it, and stood among the still air of the mine. The weight that had hung there for decades was gone. The spirits were free. When he returned to Harnsdorf at dawn, the villagers found him sitting outside the tavern, cloak drawn about his shoulders. He said nothing for a long while, only watched the rising sun burn away the mist over the hills. When the alderman approached, Geralt finally spoke. "It's done." The man bowed his head. "And the price?" Geralt's eyes, pale and tired, turned toward the east. "Paid," he said, "by those who should have paid it long ago." He rose, mounted Roach, and without another word, rode away from the village that was already forgetting him, leaving behind only silence and the faint echo of a sigh carried on the morning wind. The road away from Harnsdorf wound north through the Black Barrows, a desolate stretch of hills where the wind sang low and hollow between standing stones. Geralt rode with his hood drawn, eyes half-lidded against the morning glare. He had slept little since the curse was broken, though the silence that now lingered in his ears was almost worse than the whispers of the dead. He did not look back. Witchers seldom did, but fate, as ever, was less willing to leave him be. By dusk he reached a crossroads marked by an ancient oak. Beneath its boughs stood a wagon mired in mud, the horse long dead, its ribs showing through its hide. Beside it knelt a woman, pale with exhaustion, her cloak torn and muddied. When she saw Geralt approach, she stood abruptly, fear flickering in her eyes. "Easy," Geralt said, halting Roach a few paces away. "You'll scare the horse before you scare me." The woman hesitated, then gathered herself. "You're a witcher, aren't you? They said your kind passed this way." "They said right," he replied. "What's happened here?" She gestured toward the wagon. "I was traveling to Haga with my husband. Bandits came in the night, took him, left me with nothing but this cursed cart." Geralt dismounted, scanning the ground. The tracks were fresh, no more than a day old. 6, maybe 7 men, boots iron-shod, moving east toward the woods. "Where?" he asked. "Into the forest beyond the ridge. I heard shouting before dawn." "Then nothing?" Geralt exhaled softly. The roads between villages were never kind, but something about this woman's calm amid ruin prickled his instincts. Still, bandits were bandits, and their trail was clear enough. "Stay here," he said, mounting again. "I'll look." The forest swallowed him quickly, its canopy blotting out the last of the day's light. The path wound steeply upward, then dropped into a hollow choked with fog. His medallion trembled faintly, not from magic, but danger of a more mundane kind. He heard them before he saw them. Low laughter, the clink of metal, the sound of something being dragged. Geralt dismounted, tethered Roach silently, and crept forward. The camp lay in a clearing surrounded by fallen pines. A fire burned low, casting long shadows across the ground. Around it sat 5 men, filthy and armed, their spoils piled nearby, jewelry, crates, and a figure bound and gagged against a stump. The husband, most likely. Geralt stepped into the firelight. The laughter died instantly. Steel rasped from scabbards. "Evening," Geralt said. "You've something that doesn't belong to you." One of the men, tall, scarred, with a wolfskin cloak, grinned. "Ain't yours either, mutant." "True," Geralt replied, "but the lady you robbed sent me. Let him go." The man chuckled. "You think we'll listen to some freak with cat eyes?" Geralt sighed. "I was hoping you'd say that." The fight lasted less than a minute. The first bandit lunged, sword raised. Geralt parried, twisted, and drove his pommel into the man's temple. The second swung from behind. Ard sent him sprawling into the fire. The third and fourth died by steel. Quick, efficient, merciful. The last turned to flee, but an arcing throw pinned his leg to a tree before he could take 2 steps. Geralt freed the bound man, who gasped, trembling. Thank you. Thank me by running," Geralt said. "Back to the road. Your wife's waiting." The man nodded weakly and stumbled into the dark. Geralt gathered his weapons, cleaned his blade, and turned to leave. Yet as he passed the bandit pinned to the tree, the man spat blood and hissed, "You're too late, Witcher. She ain't what you think." Geralt paused. "Meaning?" The man laughed through broken teeth. "We didn't take her husband, she took us." Then his head fell limp. Geralt frowned, stepping away. The woods were silent again, but the air carried a strange, coppery scent. Not blood, something older. He found Roach where he had left her, and rode hard back toward the crossroads. The fog had thickened by the time he arrived, muffling every sound. The wagon still stood where it had, but the woman was gone. Only the horse's carcass remained, and something else. The husband's body lay beside the cart, throat slit, eyes wide open. Geralt dismounted slowly, senses sharp. The air felt wrong, heavy, damp, thick with the residue of magic. He crouched, examining the wound. The cut was clean, almost ritualistic. A faint scent of myrrh clung to the blood. He rose and drew his sword. "Show yourself." For a moment only silence, then a shape emerged from the fog. The woman, or something that wore her shape. Her eyes gleamed red beneath her hood. "You shouldn't have followed," she said softly. "This wasn't your hunt." Geralt's medallion vibrated wildly. "You're no peasant," he said. "No," she agreed. "I am the one who gathers breath." Mist coiled around her, thick and cold, and the Witcher understood at once. The air tightened in his lungs, and his mind flashed to the mine, the suffocating mist, the stone of ashen breath. But this was different. The curse had not died with Roderick. It had changed shape. "Not possible," he muttered. "I broke it." "You broke the vessel," she said, voice echoing like a sigh. "But curses don't die, they move. They find new breath." Her skin cracked like old porcelain, revealing gray beneath. Wisps of fog escaped from the fissures. She smiled. "He fed me for years, your precious lord. Now I feed myself." Geralt stepped back, raised the sign of Igni. Then let's see if fire can starve you. The air exploded into light as flame roared from his hand, engulfing her. For a heartbeat, she screamed. Then the sound twisted into laughter. The fire dimmed, leaving only smoke. She was gone. Geralt's pulse thundered in his ears. He turned slowly, scanning the mist. Every instinct screamed danger, but there was nothing. Only silence and the faint smell of burnt myrrh. He sheathed his sword and looked down at the dead man by the cart. Whatever the curse had become, it no longer lingered in mines or stones. It had taken flesh. He mounted Roach once more, muttering, "Damn it all, I should have known." As he rode from the crossroads, the fog followed, curling through the trees like pale fingers. Somewhere behind him, a voice whispered faintly. A woman's voice, half breath, half laughter. The curse lived, and the Witcher's hunt, it seemed, had only just begun. The fog did not lift with the dawn. It clung to the earth like a living thing, sliding between trees and hollows, swallowing every sound except the steady clop of Roach's hooves. Geralt rode northward through the Vale of Hoenn, a stretch of marshland and birch forest where few dared travel. He had no destination, only the trail of the curse, faint as a breath against the wind. The woman's words lingered in his mind. Curses don't die, they move. He had seen such things before, fragments of old magic that clung to life through hatred or hunger, twisting into new forms. Yet this one felt different. The air itself seemed heavier, as if every inhalation carried a trace of something dead but not yet finished. By midday, he reached the edge of a small settlement. 3 huts, a crooked shrine, and an inn so weather-worn that even its signboard had rotted to illegibility. Smoke rose from its chimney, and voices murmured within. Geralt tied Roach to a post, pushed open the door, and stepped into the warmth. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with a drooping mustache, looked up warily. "You lost, traveler?" "Looking for information," Geralt said. "Has anyone passed through here recently? A woman traveling alone?" The man frowned. "Plenty of women pass through, but not many walk alone. There was one, though, 2 nights ago. Paid for a room but didn't sleep in it. Said she was headed east toward the marsh road." "Did she give her name?" "Didn't ask. She had a voice like smoke. Gave me chills." Geralt tossed a coin onto the counter. "You've got good instincts." He left before the man could ask questions and mounted Roach again. The marsh road stretched ahead, half buried under mist and mud. Ravens perched on the fence posts, their eyes black as pitch. As he rode, the Witcher noticed something strange. The air grew warmer, heavier. The usual scent of rot and water was gone, replaced by a faint sweetness, almost floral. When he stopped to investigate, he found tracks. Light, bare feet pressed into the mud, leading deeper into the swamp. The water around them shimmered faintly with a grayish hue. He followed. Hours passed in silence. The only sounds were the rustle of reeds and the occasional croak of a frog. Yet as dusk began to fall, Geralt's medallion stirred. A chill ran through him. The mist thickened, swirling low across the stagnant pools. He dismounted, drawing his sword, and moved on foot. The tracks ended before a ring of standing stones half buried in moss. At their center burned a single candle, its flame impossibly steady in the wind. Geralt crouched beside it, sniffing the wax. Myrrh again. Beneath the stone, something gleamed. A fragment of silver, tarnished and carved with runes he recognized. Necromantic bindings. He heard movement behind him, soft, deliberate, not the shuffle of an animal, but footsteps. "I thought you'd come," said a voice, calm and clear. Geralt rose slowly. She stood at the edge of the stones, no longer wearing the guise of a frightened traveler. Her skin was pale as ash, her eyes glowing faintly, her hair loose and drifting as though underwater. Mist coiled around her feet like a lover. "Still breathing?" Geralt said. "That's an improvement." Her lips curved faintly. "You destroyed my father's cage, Witcher. The breath he stole had to go somewhere. It chose me. You're not his daughter." "No," she whispered. "But I am what he made." The mist around them began to pulse, each wave tugging faintly at the air. Geralt tightened his grip on his sword. "You've killed enough." She tilted her head. "You speak as though I hunt for pleasure, but I only take what is offered. Men who lie, who kill, who betray, the air they waste belongs to me now." "You're not vengeance," he said coldly. "You're corruption, a curse wearing a conscience." Her eyes flared. "And you? You kill monsters for coin and call it purpose. Tell me, Witcher, who breathes more honestly, you or I?" Geralt didn't answer. Words with creatures like this were as dangerous as blades. He raised his sword. "You'll breathe no longer." The ground shuddered. The mist surged, wrapping around her like wings. She rose from the earth, her form half shadow, half flame. The air vanished in an instant, sucked from the clearing. Geralt felt his lungs tighten, pain bursting behind his ribs. He drew the sign of Quen, a shield of golden light flaring around him, but the pressure grew. The candle on the stone flared white and died. Geralt lunged, swinging through the fog. His blade passed through her body, dispersing the shape. But the mist reformed behind him, whispering in his ear, "You can't kill breath." He spun, igniting Igni with his free hand. Fire roared outward, setting the marsh alight. For a moment, her outline became clear. The shape of a woman's body twisted by mist, her veins filled with light. She screamed, the sound tearing the night apart. Geralt drove forward, plunging his sword into her chest. The runes on his blade blazed silver white. The mist recoiled, the light dimmed. But as she fell, her hand shot out, grasping his wrist. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Every curse needs a name, Witcher, and now you've given it mine." Then she was gone, dissolving into nothing, leaving only the faint shimmer of fog that drifted away into the trees. Geralt stood alone among the stones, breathing hard. The fire burned low in the marsh pools, and the wind began to move again. The air tasted clean. He sheathed his sword and looked around. On the ground where she had stood lay a small pendant, a silver charm shaped like a teardrop. Inside it, sealed under glass, was a single black feather. He pocketed it carefully. Some part of him knew the matter was not ended. Curses rarely die cleanly, and those that spoke their own names lingered longest of all. By the time he returned to Roach, night had fallen. He rode beneath a sky thick with stars, the world quiet once more. But in the distance, somewhere deep within the marsh, a faint sigh rose, soft as a dying ember, fading into the dark. Geralt did not look back. He only whispered to himself, "Breath or no breath, you'll keep." And with that he rode onward toward the next road, the next shadow, the next contract, as the wind followed behind him, carrying with it the last trace of the curse that refused to die. The road wound toward Oxenfurt, pale in the moonlight, its stones slick with dew. Geralt rode slowly, half listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The pendant he had taken from the marsh weighed heavy in his pocket.
though it should have weighed no more than a few ounces. Sometimes it pulsed faintly like the steady throb of a weak heartbeat. 3 nights had passed since he'd faced the breath stealer in the marsh. 3 nights of uneasy sleep and dreams filled with whispers. Faces rose out of fog when he closed his eyes. The miners, the woman, even Lord Roderick himself, their mouths opening and closing soundlessly as if trying to speak through water. He'd thought to leave the matter behind him, but the pendant had other plans. It refused to be forgotten. By the 4th morning, the air began to feel strange again. The wind that came down from the mountains was colder than it should have been, carrying with it the scent of ash and something faintly metallic. When he reached a crossroads, Geralt paused. To the west, the road led toward Oxenfurt and the comfort of strong ale and stronger company. To the east, toward the highlands, he saw a mist lying low across the hills, thick, gray, too deliberate to be natural. He knew which way he would go before he even sighed. Roach snorted, stamping her hooves. He muttered. I don't like it either. He followed the eastern path. The mist thickened as the sun fell. It crawled over the ground like living smoke, swallowing the trees, muffling every sound. By nightfall, he came upon a cluster of huts, a hamlet so small it barely deserved the name. The few windows that glowed with candlelight flickered like dying stars, and no voices rose from within. Geralt dismounted, tied Roach to a fence post, and knocked on the nearest door. After a moment, an old woman opened it, clutching a rosary of pine cones. Her eyes widened when she saw him. Saints preserve us, she whispered. A witcher? He inclined his head. You've seen one before? Not since the war. You've come for the deaths, haven't you? Deaths? She nodded. 3 in as many nights. They say a sickness rides the fog. Men wake choking, gasping for air. One even clawed his own throat. Geralt's jaw tightened. Show me where. The old woman hesitated, then led him through the village. They passed shuttered windows, crosses carved into doors, and the still forms of livestock lying dead in the frost. At the edge of the hamlet stood a barn, its roof half collapsed. She pointed. In there, that was Eric's place. Geralt stepped inside. The air was heavy, stagnant. The scent of rot was fresh. A body lay sprawled in the hay, face blue, eyes open and glassy. The Witcher crouched beside it, examining the chest. The skin around the mouth and nose was blackened. Not by disease, but by smoke. He drew a knife and made a shallow cut. The lungs beneath the skin were shriveled, dry as parchment. He sighed. Not sickness. Suffocation magic. The woman crossed herself. A demon? He looked up. A curse. Old one, and if I'm right, it's moved on from the marshes. She stared at him, trembling. Can you stop it? I'll try, he said, though his voice held no certainty. Geralt spent the night studying the signs. He found strange markings on the ground near the well, runes carved into frost, faint and fleeting as if drawn by breath itself. They formed a circle. Inside it, small bones lay scattered. Birds, mice, even a fox's skull. He knelt and touched one. It crumbled to dust beneath his glove. When he rose, he noticed the pendant at his neck had begun to glow faintly, the black feather within swirling as if caught in an unseen current. The Witcher felt the pull in his chest, a tightening, a whisper threading through his thoughts. You broke me. You set me free. He turned sharply, scanning the darkness. Show yourself. Nothing, only the fog, curling gently around his boots. He drew his sword anyway. You want to breathe through me now? Come and try.
The mist stirred, coalescing into a figure, the woman again, or what was left of her. Her form flickered like smoke caught in wind. "Why chase me, Witcher?" she whispered. "You should be thanking me. I cleanse the world of liars, thieves, killers. You kill for coin, I kill for balance." "Don't flatter yourself," Geralt said. "You're just another curse pretending to be just." Her laughter was soft, like the exhale of dying lungs. "And you pretend to be merciful. Tell me, did you bury the miners you freed, or did you ride away and leave their bones to rot?" He said nothing. The truth needed no defense. "You see," she said, "we're the same. You, me, your noble lord. You kill, and you breathe easier for it." Geralt's patience broke. He drew Igni. Fire burst from his hand, searing through the mist. The wraith shrieked and vanished, but not before the pendant at his chest flared so hot it burned his skin. He tore it off and flung it into the snow. It pulsed once, twice, then shattered. A rush of air burst outward, extinguishing every lantern in the village, and then silence. The fog began to thin. The stars appeared overhead, pale and cold. Geralt stood for a long while, waiting, but nothing moved. The whisper was gone. He sheathed his sword and retrieved what was left of the pendant, a single fragment of glass, no larger than a coin, still faintly warm. He tucked it away carefully. The old woman appeared from behind the barn door, eyes wide. "Is it over?" "For now," Geralt said, "but keep to your homes at night. If you feel the air grow heavy, don't breathe it." She nodded shakily. "You'll leave us?" He looked east, where the first gray light of dawn touched the horizon. "There's always another road." He mounted Roach and rode on, the cold wind filling his lungs. For a moment it felt pure again, untainted. But somewhere deep inside, he knew the curse had not died. It had only changed its form once more, waiting for another fool to draw breath where it should not. As he vanished into the rising sun, a breeze stirred behind him, faint but steady. The villagers later swore that when the wind blew through Hohen Vale, it carried with it the sound of quiet breathing, a soft rhythm that never truly stopped. For several days Geralt rode without pause, following the winter roads that led north through the foothills of Temeria. The weather had turned bitter, and the sky hung low with gray clouds that promised snow. Every breath from Roach's nostrils drifted like smoke. Every hoofbeat echoed too loudly in the empty valleys. Though he'd left the haunted village behind, the Witcher could not shake the feeling that something followed him. The air behind his back seemed always colder, the shadows longer than they should be. He had destroyed the pendant, shattered the curse's anchor, and yet there was no peace. His medallion quivered at odd moments, faint but insistent, like the beating of a second heart. By the third night, he found shelter at a forester's lodge on the edge of the Demborn woods. The forester, a bearded man named Ivar, recognized him at once. "Geralt of Rivia," he said, offering a nod. "Heard stories. Didn't think they'd send a Witcher this far north unless the pay was rich." "I'm not here for coin," Geralt said, shaking the frost from his cloak. "Just warmth and quiet." Ivar chuckled. "You'll get the first. As for the second, well, the woods don't take kindly to quiet." The Witcher lifted an eyebrow. "Meaning?" The forester poured 2 mugs of mead and gestured toward the hearth. "Strange things have been stirring since the last thaw. Folks go hunting and never return. Others come back with lungs full of soot, like they've breathed from a chimney. Some say it's the breath stealer come north. Geralt froze with the mug halfway to his lips. What name did you say? Ivar shrugged. Old wives' tale, no doubt. Ghost that steals the breath of liars and cowards. Been told since my grandfather's day. But lately, there's truth to it. You look like a man who's seen such things. The Witcher stared into the fire. Maybe I have. The forester said nothing more, and Geralt did not elaborate. When the fire burned low, he unrolled his blanket by the hearth and tried to sleep. But dreams came instead. Heavy, suffocating dreams. He was back in the mine, surrounded by mist. The woman stood before him again, pale and silent. Her eyes were endless wells of gray. You can't burn the wind, she whispered. You can't kill what breathes through you. He woke with a start, gasping. The fire had died to embers. The air in the room was thick, heavy, unmoving. Outside, something screamed. Geralt was on his feet in an instant, swords drawn. Ivar's chair was empty, his blanket tossed aside. The scream came again from the yard. The Witcher pushed open the door. Snow swirled through the darkness. The moon had vanished behind clouds, and the world was silver and black. Ivar lay sprawled near the woodpile, his hands clawing at his throat. His mouth was open, eyes bulging. No mark of blade or claw, only the frost of breath frozen midair. Geralt crouched beside the body, grim-faced. So you've come north after all. The mist rolled in, silent as a thief. It coiled between the trees, forming the faint outline of a figure. Her voice drifted through the cold. You brought me, Witcher. Every curse needs a path. You were mine. Geralt's medallion trembled violently. You've been feeding, he said quietly. Each death makes you stronger. I breathe what men waste, she said. You all exhale lies, hate, regret. I take what you cast aside. Her shape solidified, the faint glow of her eyes visible through the swirling mist. Geralt drew a sign with his hand. Yrden flared in blue light across the snow, forming a protective circle. The mist recoiled from it, hissing. You can't hide behind signs forever, she whispered. Sooner or later, even you must breathe. Not tonight, Geralt muttered. He ignited Igni. Fire swept outward, licking the mist's edge, turning it to steam. For a moment, the air cleared, but then the wind shifted, and the mist reformed behind him. It struck like a gust, throwing him to the ground. He rolled, came up on one knee, and slashed through the fog with his silver sword. The blade hummed, cutting cleanly through her phantom shape. The wraith shrieked, her form collapsing inward but not vanishing. Her voice filled the air again, many voices now whispering over one another. You freed me from stone, Witcher. You made me flesh, and flesh must feed. Geralt gritted his teeth, drew a dagger coated with oil, and flung it into the heart of the mist. The steel burst in a flash of azure flame, a witcher's trick known only to a few schools. The impact sent ripples through the fog, scattering it like torn fabric. When the light faded, the clearing was empty. Geralt lowered his sword slowly, breathing hard. His lungs burned. Every breath felt shallow, labored. The air itself seemed thinner, as though part of it had been stolen. He glanced down at Ivar's body, still frozen, rimed with frost. Then he looked toward the forest. The mist was gone, but the wind carried a faint sigh through the trees. The Witcher stood there until dawn, sword in hand, waiting for the light to drive away what shadows remained. When morning came, he buried Ivar beneath the old oak behind the lodge, marking the grave with a simple stone. He spoke no prayer. Witchers were not priests, and words did little for the dead. As he packed his gear, he noticed something odd, faint runes etched into the frost near the woodpile, not carved by hand, but shaped by wind, curling and reforming as the sunlight touched them. They were the same symbols he had seen in the village, in the marsh, even in the mine. The sigils of binding, of air and breath.
Only now they formed a new pattern, a spiral pointing north. Geralt stared at it for a long moment, then mounted Roach. The mare tossed her head, uneasy. "I know," he murmured, "but we've come this far." He rode until the forest thinned and the land opened into a wide, barren plain. Snow swept across the grass in long, ghostly lines. Far ahead, at the foot of the mountains, something glimmered faintly. A ruin, perhaps, or the entrance to an old keep. The medallion at his neck thrummed again, stronger than before. Whatever haunted him had gone ahead to wait. And so Geralt urged Roach forward into the white silence, following the faint breath of wind that carried his curse ever northward. The ruin stood upon a hill of black stone, its towers long crumbled, its walls veined with frost. The locals called it Caer Disen, though few remembered what lord had built it, or when. The castle had been abandoned since before the Nilfgaardian Wars, left to rot beneath the endless snow. Yet as Geralt approached, he saw the unmistakable signs of disturbance. A half-broken gate forced open from within, tracks half buried by the drifting white, the faint shimmer of torchlight deep in the courtyard. He dismounted. Roach snorted uneasily, pawing at the frozen ground. "Stay," he murmured, stroking her neck. "This one stinks of ghosts." He drew his silver blade, the runes along its fuller, faintly pulsing in the gray light. Each breath that left his lips formed a mist that lingered too long, curling around him like smoke, reluctant to depart. The air here was colder, thinner, as though the ruin itself drank it. He crossed the courtyard in silence. The snow here bore strange marks, circles etched into the frost, symbols made of ash and bone. He recognized them, air sigils, designed to bind a spirit, or worse, to call one. The keep's great doors hung crooked on their hinges. Inside lay a grand hall stripped bare by time. Faded banners hung limp from the rafters, their heraldry long lost beneath mold and dust. At the far end stood a dais where a stone throne leaned against the wall, cracked clean down the middle. Upon it lay a single object, a chalice, silver, darkened with tarnish. The Witcher stepped closer. The chalice was filled not with wine or water, but with snow that did not melt. He touched the rim, and the air trembled. A voice spoke, echoing from the shadows. "You return to the cradle of breath, Witcher." He turned sharply. She stood upon the stairs above, her form more solid now. No longer wraith or fog, but flesh made from the echo of both. Her eyes burned faintly like embers buried under ash. "You've been busy," Geralt said, "feeding, gathering strength. Why here?" "Because this is where the breath began." Her tone was calm, almost reverent. "The miners who died, the Lord who damned them, they drew power from this place. This is where Roderick's mage bound the first spirit of air. The curse was born here long before your meddling freed it." Geralt's jaw tightened. "Then I'll end it where it began." She smiled faintly. "Do you still believe you can kill a curse with steel? I've killed worse. Not worse than yourself." Before he could reply, she lifted her hand. The air shuddered. Wind roared through the broken hall, tearing at the banners, hurling shards of ice like knives.
Geralt braced himself, casting Quen, the shield of golden light forming around him as the gale struck. The force drove him back a step, then two. He answered with Igni. Flame leapt from his hand, curling against the storm. For a heartbeat, fire and wind clashed, screaming through the hall. Then silence. The flames flickered and died. The woman descended the stairs, her feet leaving no print in the snow. "You are not my enemy," she said softly. "You never were. The curse needs a vessel, something strong, something that endures. You broke the stone, you destroyed its anchor. You are its natural heir." Geralt's fingers tightened on his sword hilt. "You think I'll let that happen? You already have." He felt it then, the cold coiling deep in his chest, the faint tremor in his breath. Each inhalation burned slightly, each exhale clouded too thickly. He had felt it since the mine, since the marsh, since the lodge. The curse had not been following him. It had been within him all along. His eyes narrowed. "You clever bastard." She tilted her head. "You freed me to fill my place. The curse cannot die. It only trades its breath for another's. The miner's cries, Roderick's guilt, my hunger, all flow into you now." Geralt said nothing. His mind worked, cold and fast. A curse-bound breath could not be slain, only silenced. She reached to the bottom of the stairs. "Give in," she whispered. "Let me take what remains of your breath, and I will leave this world. You can rest." The Witcher's expression hardened. Rest isn't part of the job. He moved in a blur. The silver blade slashed upward, cutting through her midsection. She gasped, not in pain, but in surprise. Mist bled from the wound, curling upward like smoke. Geralt drove forward, striking again, each blow ringing through the hall. But as fast as he cut, she reformed. Her laughter filled the air, brittle and sharp. "You can't slay the wind." "No," Geralt snarled, "but I can cage it." He dropped his sword, drew a rune stone from his pouch, one carved in Kaer Morhen's forge, a relic of elemental binding. He pressed it against his palm, drawing blood to awaken its power, then slammed it to the ground. The rune ignited. Blue light blazed across the floor, forming a circle that burned through snow and stone. Wind screamed as it struck the barrier. The wraith howled, her body unraveling into spirals of gray. The Witcher staggered, gripping the rune stone tighter. The wind pressed against him, cold and furious, pulling at his lungs. The curse tried to flee and to find a new host, but the circle held. "You cannot hold me forever," she hissed. "Don't need forever," he said through clenched teeth. "Just long enough." With his free hand, he drew Igni one last time. Fire leapt from his palm, not in a burst, but in a steady, roaring flame. He fed it with his breath, each exhale fanning the inferno. The flames met the wind, merged, and turned the air itself into fire. The hall filled with blinding light. The wind shrieked, the runes cracked, and then silence. When the world steadied again, the hall was still. The snow had melted into water that steamed upon the stones. The air was heavy but clean. Geralt stood alone amid the ruin. The rune stone lay cracked beside him, its glow fading. He exhaled slowly. No mist left his lips this time, only air. He sheathed his sword, though his hands trembled slightly. His breath felt normal again, but a faint cold lingered within. Not pain, but presence. As he left the hall, the first flakes of new snow began to fall. The wind brushed against his cheek, soft, almost grateful. Outside, Roach waited patiently. The mare nickered when she saw him. "Still breathing," he murmured, patting her mane. "That's something." He mounted and rode down the hill without looking back. The ruin behind him disappeared into the storm, its windows glimmering faintly, as if something within watched him go. By nightfall, the wind had changed direction. It no longer whispered with the voice of the dead, but it carried something else. A quiet rhythm, almost human. The faint echo of breath, drawn and released. Geralt of Rivia rode onward through the snow, the curse broken or perhaps only sleeping, a last breath lingering in the lungs of a man who had outlived too many ghosts. Snow fell thick and slow, muting every sound as Geralt guided Roach through the pass that wound between the shoulders of Mount Dregor. The storm that had begun at Caerdisen had followed him north, whirling around the cliffs like a living thing. Each gust felt like fingers tugging at his cloak, each flake like a whisper of cold breath against his skin. He rode without rest. The fight in the ruined hall had drained him to the marrow, and though the curse seemed broken, he could not rid himself of the uneasy feeling that something still watched from behind the storm. Every time he inhaled, he half expected the air to turn to ice in his chest. By the second evening, he found shelter in a hunter's cabin tucked into the mountainside. The door stood half open, snow piled against it. Inside, the hearth was cold, and the walls lined with pelts. No fire had burned here for weeks. Still, it was shelter. Geralt built a small flame, removed his armor piece by piece, and sat before the warmth. He listened. The wind outside howled and then fell silent, the kind of silence that made the ears strain for sound. His medallion quivered once, then stilled. "Still following me, are you?" he murmured to the dark. Only the fire answered, snapping softly. He dozed lightly. When he woke, the storm had stopped, but a strange glow filtered through the cracks in the shutters, moonlight cold and blue. He rose, sword in hand, and eased the door open. The world beyond was hushed and silver. Snow lay untouched across the slopes, yet in its smooth surface he saw them, prints, faint and narrow, leading away into the trees. Bare feet. Geralt cursed under his breath, slung his cloak about his shoulders, and followed. The tracks wound through the forest like a line of pale ghosts. They led to a clearing where a frozen pool lay beneath the moonlight. Ice stretched across its surface like glass, clear enough to see the dark water below. In the center of that pool stood a figure, a woman, hair long and white as frost, her back to him. Not the wraith, something older. Geralt stopped at the edge. "You've come far from where you belong," he said quietly. She turned slowly. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with malice, but with sorrow. "As have you, Witcher." He recognized her then, not the curse's vessel, but a spirit of air itself, one of the forgotten elementals once worshipped by mages, before chaos claimed their craft. He had read of them in the scrolls of Kaer Morhen. Sylphs, the ancients had called them. "You carry her echo," the spirit said. "The curse that took breath from others lingers still inside you." Geralt's hand brushed the hilt of his sword. "Then I'll find a way to rid myself of it." Her voice drifted across the ice like wind through reeds. "You cannot. To breathe is to bind. Every breath is borrowed, every exhale a surrender. You took her last, and now it is yours." He frowned. "What do you want from me?" "To remember," she said simply. "The curse was born from the greed of men who mined the air from the earth. You killed the last of them, but their hunger remains in every village, every lord's hall. You will see it. You will carry their breath until the world learns to hold its own." Geralt shook his head. I'm no prophet. I'm a killer of monsters." "And what are monsters?" she asked, "if not those who steal the breath of others to feed their own life?" The question hung in the cold, heavy as stone. The Witcher said nothing. The spirit stepped closer. The ice beneath her feet did not crack. "Your curse will not slay you, Witcher, not unless you deny it. But beware. Should you draw your blade in anger, should you kill without need, the air you steal will grow black. Then you will be what you hunt." Her form began to fade, the wind rising around her. "Go east to the valley of Hovrik. There the breath of the dead gathers again. End it before it finds another host." The wind gusted once more, and she was gone. Only her words remained, echoing faintly through the trees. Geralt stood for a moment longer, staring at the frozen pool. Beneath the ice, bubbles drifted upward, rising to burst soundlessly. He turned away, jaw tight, and began the long walk back to the cabin. By dawn he was on the road again, heading east as she had said. The mountains fell behind, replaced by rolling plains buried in snow. Smoke rose on the horizon, signs of life. He reached Hovrik by midday. The town was small, its streets lined with wooden houses, each roof bowed beneath the weight of winter. Yet the air was wrong here too, still, suffocating. No children played in the streets, no blacksmith's hammer rang from the forge. When Geralt passed, people shut their doors. He found the alderman in a hall near the square, pacing before the fire. The man nearly dropped his cup when he saw the Witcher's medallion. "By the gods, they sent one," he said. "We prayed, and you came." "I wasn't sent," Geralt replied. "But I heard you've trouble." The alderman nodded quickly. "A sickness. Men and beasts dying in their sleep. The healer says their lungs turn to dust. The air in the valley smells of ash." Geralt's face darkened. "When did it begin?" 3 nights ago, after the storm. Some claim they saw lights on the hills, moving like lanterns. Others heard singing. The Witcher's gaze turned toward the window, where the snow drifted thick against the glass. "Where do these lights appear?" "By the river bend, near the old shrine to Melitele." "Burn no candles there," Geralt said grimly. "I'll go tonight." The shrine stood on a rise above the frozen river, its goddess's face half buried in snow. Around it flickered faint blue flames, will-o'-wisps circling lazily, feeding on the air itself. Geralt drew his sword and approached, his medallion trembling. In the snow before the altar lay 5 bodies, their faces peaceful, eyes closed as though asleep. The wind hissed softly through the reeds, and the Witcher felt the air thicken, pressing at his chest. He traced a sign, Yrden. Light bloomed, and the wisps recoiled. From the darkness behind the shrine rose a shape of mist, larger than before, but different. Not the woman this time. Dozens of faces swirled within it. The miners, the villagers, even Ivar's pale ghost, all breathing in unison. The breath of the dead. Geralt set his stance. "You should have stayed buried." The fog moved like a living sea, reaching for him with spectral hands. He struck, silver flashing, slicing through vapor and shadow. Each cut loosed a cry that froze the air. The Yrden circle held, glowing brighter as he poured his strength into it. But the fog pressed harder, swirling around him, whispering, "You breathe for us now." Geralt grit his teeth, slashing through the mist until his arms burned. Then he felt it, the faint warmth in his chest, the trace of the curse still lodged within him, the breath that was not his own. He exhaled slowly, letting the power flow outward. The mist halted as if listening. Then it began to unravel, drawn toward the breath he released. "Take it," he growled. "All of it." The air shimmered. The faces within the fog turned upward, mouths open in silent relief. Then the wind rose, scattering them into snowflakes that vanished into the sky. The shrine was silent again. The air felt light, pure. Geralt dropped to one knee, breathing heavily. For the first time in weeks, his lungs felt his own. The curse had gone with the dead. He sheathed his sword and looked east, where the dawn was breaking, pale and clean across the snow. For now, the world could breathe again. The morning after the battle at the shrine dawned clear and bright. The river, frozen and glassy, reflected the sunlight in long ribbons of gold and white. Geralt rode along its bank, the wind crisp in his lungs, the silence around him clean for the first time in weeks. No whisper of breath followed him now, no trembling of his medallion. The air belonged once more to itself, yet peace never stayed long with witchers. He reached Hovrik by midday. The townsfolk, seeing him return alive, spilled into the square. They did not cheer, nor did they come close. They simply stood, silent, staring with that mix of awe and fear that always followed his kind. Geralt dismounted and approached the alderman who waited by the well, hat in hand. "It's done," the witcher said. The alderman's mouth opened, then shut again. "We felt it," he murmured at last. "Last night, the air changed. The heaviness lifted, like the valley itself had drawn its first breath in years." Geralt nodded. "Bury your dead before the next snow. Burn sage and salt by the river. No songs, no prayers. Let the silence stay." The man hesitated, then said quietly, "You've done what priests and knights could not. What payment do you ask?" Geralt adjusted the strap on his saddle. "None. The curse took enough." He mounted Roach and turned eastward again. Behind him the villagers watched until he vanished beyond the hills. They would speak of him for years. The white-haired stranger who came with the storm and left with the dawn. But his name would fade with time, as it always did. The road led him through a narrow gorge where the cliffs rose steep on either side, black stone dusted with snow. He rode until twilight, when the sky burned red and violet above the peaks. He thought often of what the sylph had said, that he carried the echo of the curse still. He did not feel it now, but witchers learned long ago that absence of pain was no proof of healing. When night fell, he made camp beside an abandoned watchtower. The stones still bore the insignia of Temeria's old guard, though moss and time had nearly erased them. He built a small fire, cooked what little meat he carried, and settled down beneath his cloak. Sleep came fitfully. He dreamed of a valley drowned in mist, of lungs that drew air not for life, but for hunger. He saw faces again, the miners, the woman, Roderick, all staring with hollow eyes. Then, from the fog, another face appeared, his own. Its mouth opened, and from it poured smoke, black as pitch. He woke at once. The fire had gone out, though the air was still warm. His medallion trembled faintly. Geralt sat up, scanning the darkness. Nothing stirred, no sound, but the slow crack of cooling embers. Then faintly, he heard it. Breathing, not his own. Slow, steady, drawn from the shadows. He rose, hand to sword. "You again," he muttered. The darkness rippled near the edge of the camp, and a figure stepped into view. Not mist, not spirit, but a man wrapped in furs, face hidden beneath a hood. "Easy,"
Geralt said, lowering the blade a fraction. You're lucky I didn't strike first. The man said nothing, only stood there, motionless. Traveler? Geralt asked. Hunter? Still no answer. The Witcher's instincts screamed. He moved in a blur, steel flashing from its sheath. But before the blade met flesh, the stranger raised a hand. The air rippled. Geralt's strike faltered. His sword halted mid-swing as if caught in invisible fingers. Enough, the stranger said at last. His voice was deep, resonant, familiar in a way that made Geralt's stomach twist. You've done well, Witcher, but your work isn't finished. Who are you? The man pushed back his hood. His face was pale, ageless, his eyes the color of storm clouds. Geralt knew that look, sorcerer's eyes. My name is of no use, the man said. Once, I was the mage who served Lord Roderick. Geralt's hand tightened on his hilt. The one who started all this. The mage inclined his head slightly. Started, yes, not by choice. Roderick sought immortality through breath. I warned him the elements demand balance. What he took from the earth, the air claimed back tenfold. The curse you fought was not my creation, but his greed made manifest. You should have stopped him. I tried, but power listens only to power. The mage's gaze moved to the sky where snow began to fall again. You've quieted the curse for now, but its core still stirs. You felt it, didn't you? The cold in your chest, the echo. Geralt said nothing. That echo binds you to it, the mage continued, not by malice, but by nature. Breath flows where life does. Destroying the curse entirely would mean ending yourself. I've heard worse bargains, Geralt said dryly. The mage smiled faintly. You joke, but you know truth. When you hear it, the world must breathe, Witcher, and so must its curses. All things born of men return to them. When the air grows heavy again, you will know it has begun anew. Then I'll hunt it again. The mage's expression softened. Ever stubborn. You cannot fight what lives inside you. Geralt met his gaze coldly. Watch me. For a long moment neither spoke. Then the mage sighed and drew something from within his cloak, a small vial, clear and shimmering faintly with light. Take this, he said, distilled essence of ether. It will temper the curse's hold when it stirs, but it will not cure you. Nothing can. Geralt took the vial, turning it in his fingers. Why help me? Because balance must be kept, the mage said simply, and because I tire of ghosts. Before Geralt could reply, the man's form shimmered. The wind rose suddenly, whipping snow into the air. When it cleared, the mage was gone, leaving only the faint scent of myrrh and frost. Geralt stood a long while, staring at the empty space. Then he slipped the vial into his pouch and sat once more beside the fire. The snow hissed softly as it touched the coals. By morning, he was already on the road again. The storm had passed, leaving behind a sky pale as iron. He rode eastward into lands he did not know, toward no village and no contract. The vial glimmered at his belt, light catching within it like the slow pulse of a sleeping heart. The wind brushed against his face, cool and gentle. For now it was only wind. But far to the south, in the ruins of Caerdison, where ice still crept through the cracks of stone, the air began to move again. It whispered through the halls, faint but growing until the sound became that of a single, steady breath. And somewhere beyond the horizon, Geralt of Rivia felt the faintest stir of cold beneath his ribs and smiled grimly to himself. Seems the world's still breathing, he murmured. So am I. Then he rode on, and the wind followed, weaving its song through the white silence of winter.
The days shortened as Geralt rode east, the sun setting quicker behind the gray mountains. Winter's hand had closed around the land, turning rivers to stone and forests to white skeletons. The air was thin and sharp, the kind that stung the lungs and made the breath come in clouds. He followed no map, no rumor of coin or contract. Only instinct, that faint tug that had never once failed him. The vial given by the mage glimmered faintly at his belt, and every now and again he felt its warmth against his thigh, as if something inside stirred restlessly. Villages were few in these parts. The people he passed spoke little, only nodding warily at the sight of the Witcher's swords. Once, a farmer offered him bread and ale, but when Geralt asked about strange deaths or sickness, the man paled and crossed himself, muttering that the mountains were best left alone. On the fifth evening, a blizzard swept down from the peaks. Without warning, the sky darkened and snow fell so thick that it swallowed the world. Roach trudged on, each breath steaming in the bitter air. Geralt pulled his cloak tighter and kept moving, though the road had long since vanished beneath the drifts. At last, through the storm, he saw a light, a faint, wavering glow. He guided Roach toward it and soon found a cottage half buried in snow, smoke curling weakly from its chimney. He dismounted, knocked once, and pushed the door open. A fire burned low within. An old man sat near it, wrapped in furs, his face lined like weathered bark, his eyes lifted, pale and sharp as a hawk's. "Traveler," the old man rasped. "Witcher?" Geralt corrected, brushing snow from his shoulders. "Caught by the storm." The old man nodded, wordless, and gestured toward the fire. Geralt set his gear aside and took a seat. For a while they listened to the wind battering the walls. Then the old man spoke again. "Few come this way," he said, "and fewer live to leave. The mountains don't forgive." Geralt's tone was calm. "Something in them that shouldn't be?" The old man hesitated, then poked the fire. "You've the look of one who already knows. The air here's gone strange. Thin, wrong. We wake in the night, gasping. The animals, too. Birds fall dead from the sky." Geralt stared into the flames. "When did it begin?" "After the thaw. Thought it was the snow melt, the rot beneath the ice. But then we heard it." "Heard what?" The old man's gaze lifted to the window. "Breathing. From the cliffs. The mountain itself drawing in air and letting it go." The Witcher felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. "How far?" "Half a day's climb east. The pass they call the Giant's Throat. But go there, Witcher, and you'll not come back." Geralt rose. "We'll see." The storm eased by dawn, leaving the world buried in white silence. Geralt saddled Roach, thanked the old man, and set off toward the cliffs. The air grew colder with each step, the wind whispering through fissures in the rock like breath through teeth. The name of the pass was well earned. The walls of stone narrowed sharply, rising into a gaping maw that seemed to swallow the sky. Inside, the air pulsed faintly. Inhale, exhale. Geralt dismounted and proceeded on foot. The sound grew stronger, deeper, as though the mountain itself lived and breathed. The walls glittered with frost that shimmered faintly blue. He drew his silver sword and lit a torch. After a time he came upon a cavern. At its center lay a pit vast and black, rimmed with ice. From its depths rose the sound of steady breathing. He peered over the edge and saw movement below, shapes, countless and pale, shifting in the dark like fish beneath water. Each shape exhaled mist that drifted upward,
joining the air above in a spiraling current. Geralt's stomach tightened. These were not living men. They were the remnants of breath itself, souls drawn here, bound in endless inhalation. He muttered a curse. "So this is where you fled." From the pit, a whisper rose, soft but clear. "You freed me once, Witcher. Why come again?" Mist swelled from below, rising until it coalesced into a form before him. The woman stood once more, though her face was calmer now, her eyes no longer aflame. "I ended you," Geralt said. "You ended a fragment," she replied. "But breath cannot die. It finds new mouths, new lungs. Now it dwells in the mountain, and soon it will wake the world." Geralt's grip tightened on his sword. "Then I'll silence it again." "You cannot," she said gently. "To kill it, you must stop breathing yourself." "Then I'll hold my breath longer than it can." He raised his blade and stepped forward. The wraith spread her arms, and the air thickened, pressing against him. His lungs screamed for air, but he forced his stride onward, the runes on his sword blazing white. The pit roared like a beast. He swung once, twice, each strike carving through mist and wind alike. The wraith staggered, her form unraveling. "You only delay it," she gasped. "Story of my life." Geralt growled and drove his blade through her heart. The world exploded in light. Wind howled from the pit, tearing through the cavern, lifting snow and stone in a whirlwind. The Witcher threw himself flat as the gale screamed overhead. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. He lay still, gasping. The air was utterly still now, heavy and warm. The sound of breathing had ceased. The mountain was dead. When he rose, the wraith was gone. Only the sword's runes still glowed faintly, their light dimming with each exhale he drew. He sheathed the blade, picked up his torch, and began the long climb back to the surface. The storm had cleared by the time he emerged. The sun broke through the clouds, dazzling off the snow. Below, the valley lay quiet and untouched. Geralt paused, letting the sunlight warm his face. His breath rose in a faint, even plume. For the first time in months, he felt no weight in his chest. No cold, no whisper, only silence. He mounted Roach and turned westward. As they descended the path, a single gust of wind brushed his hair. It was gentle, harmless, yet it carried a faint voice, barely audible, like the sigh of distant memory. "All things that breathe will end with you." Geralt did not look back. He rode on into the bright white morning, the snow crunching beneath Roach's hooves, the world at peace for now. But somewhere, deep within the mountain, a faint rhythm began anew. Not a voice, not a curse, just the steady pulse of the wind's return, gathering strength, waiting for another to breathe life into it once more. Spring came slowly to the north that year. The snows melted, leaving behind black soil and streams swollen with ice water. The scent of thawing earth filled the valleys, carrying with it the promise of new life. Yet for Geralt of Rivia, the changing of seasons brought no ease. He had left the mountains behind, but their chill lingered in him still. The path led him west, through forests budding with pale green, and over meadows where crows circled above the thawed carcasses of beasts that winter had claimed. He slept little. At night he dreamed of wind, not storms or gales, but soft breaths drawn and released in rhythm, endless and inescapable. He told himself the curse was ended. The mountain lay silent, but silence, he knew, was only breath waiting to return. By the time he reached the outskirts of Gorsfell, the first travelers had begun to whisper of strange things. Shepherds spoke of flocks found suffocated in their pens. Children woke gasping in the night.
The priests of Melitele lit incense at every altar, but the smoke never rose straight. It curled sideways as if pulled by an unseen lung. Geralt rode through the village at dusk. The people watched him with the same dread he'd seen in Hovrik. That half hope, half fear that came when death was near and salvation wore a silver sword. He stopped at the tavern, small and dimly lit, where a single lantern flickered over the bar. The innkeeper, a man with gray whiskers and cautious eyes, nodded to him. "Evening, Witcher. You've the look of one who's seen worse than you'll find here." Geralt removed his gloves. "I doubt it. What's been happening?" The man glanced at the door before answering. "It started with the animals, then the sick, now the healthy. They say the air turns heavy at night. You can feel it pressing on your chest like a stone. The priests call it punishment for greed, but..." He hesitated. "Some say a pale woman walks the hills when the moon's high." Geralt's expression hardened. "Anyone seen her face?" "No, they say she's covered in mist." He nodded. "Lock your doors tonight. Keep your fires burning. And if the air grows cold, don't breathe it." The innkeeper swallowed. "You'll go after it?" Geralt's eyes, yellow in the lamplight, glimmered faintly. "That's what I do." Night came clear and sharp, the moon hanging full over the hills. Geralt left the village behind, following the narrow path that led toward the ruins of an old watchtower. The grass was dry beneath his boots, the earth cracked from frost. Each breath he drew came back to him in echoes, as if the night itself breathed alongside him. At the foot of the tower, he found a ring of stones blackened by fire. Ash still clung to them, though no one had lit a flame in days. Beside the ring lay the bones of a deer, its ribs splintered, its skull crushed inward. Something had drained it dry. He crouched, tracing the sign of Ard to clear the ashes. Beneath them, carved into the rock, were runes, spirals of air and wave, the marks of invocation. The same symbols he had seen in Hovrik, in the mine, in every place the curse had touched. "Persistent thing," he muttered. A breeze stirred behind him, faint but deliberate. He rose, hand on his sword. "I warned you once." The wind thickened, coiling into mist that shimmered pale blue beneath the moon. Out of it stepped a figure. Not the woman as he remembered her, but taller, draped in tatters of white that moved like smoke. Her eyes glowed faintly, and when she spoke, her voice was both near and far. "You thought the mountain was my end. It was my beginning." Geralt drew his blade. "You're not her. I am what she left behind. The breath she released, the air you claimed. I am you." Her words struck deeper than they should have. For an instant her face shifted, and he saw his own beneath the shroud of mist. "Trick of the light," he growled. "No trick. You carry me still." Her voice was soft, almost tender. "You fight me as you fight your own nature. The mountain's curse was never mine alone. It is the breath of every death you've dealt." Geralt's grip tightened. "I don't kill for hunger. Don't you?" she whispered. "Each contract, each swing of that silver sword, you draw their last breath and keep it for yourself. You feed on it. I merely give it form." The Witcher said nothing. The wind tugged at his cloak, cold and smelling faintly of ash. "Let it go," she said. "Breathe out, and I will fade." "I've seen what happens when you fade," he said quietly. "The dead walk, the living choke. I won't give you the world again." "Then you'll keep me," she murmured, "until your last breath." The mist surged forward.
Geralt drew the sign of Igni. Fire burst outward, searing through her form. She screamed, a sound like a gale through broken glass, and the air exploded around him. He staggered backward, boots skidding on the rock. When his vision cleared, she was gone. The night was still once more, save for the wind sighing softly through the tower's cracks. He stood motionless for a long time, chest heaving. His medallion lay cold against his skin, unmoving. The curse, if curse it was, had retreated again into silence. Geralt sheathed his sword and looked toward the horizon, where dawn was beginning to gray the sky. By morning, the villagers found him sitting on the hill above Gorsfell, watching the sun rise. They approached cautiously, bearing food and mead, but he waved them away. "Is it over?" the innkeeper asked. "For now," Geralt said. The man frowned. "Then why do you look as though it isn't?" "Because curses don't end," Geralt replied. "They rest, like men between breaths." He rose, mounted Roach, and turned toward the road. The wind blew gently down from the north, carrying the scent of pine and thaw. It felt clean, honest, yet somewhere within it lingered a faint echo, his own breath returning to him or another's, he could not tell. He touched the vial at his belt. It was cold now, empty of its light. Whatever magic had once slept within it was gone. He rode until the village disappeared behind him, the hills rolling away into distance. Each hoofbeat of Roach was steady, each exhale his own. The sky ahead was wide and blue, unmarred by storm or mist. But as he looked toward it, he found himself thinking of the words the Wraith had spoken. "You feed on what you kill." Geralt of Rivia did not believe in prophecy, yet as he rode into the rising sun, he felt the weight of every breath he had ever stolen, pressing faintly against his chest, quiet and visible, waiting. And the wind that followed him down the road seemed to whisper, softly, almost kindly, "All debts must be paid, Witcher. Even the air you breathe." The road turned south, winding through fields gone to seed, where spring had yet to coax the first green shoots from the frozen soil. Geralt rode with his cloak drawn tight, the wind pushing against him in long, hollow gusts. Each breeze seemed to murmur through the grass, whispering fragments of words he could almost understand. Breaths of memory, perhaps, or ghosts of those long gone. The sun rose pale and distant, shedding more light than warmth. He followed the river that carved its way through the valley, its surface still glazed with thin ice that cracked softly under the current. Every sound was sharp in the cold air, yet the world felt too quiet, as though the land itself was waiting for something. When the first village appeared on the horizon, Geralt thought at first it was deserted. The thatched roofs sagged under the weight of winter, and smoke drifted weakly from only a few chimneys. He slowed Roach to a trot and crossed the narrow bridge that led to the square. A single figure waited there, a girl no older than 16, wrapped in a cloak far too big for her, her eyes green and wide, fixed on him the moment he appeared. "You're the Witcher," she said softly. Geralt dismounted. "That depends who's asking." "My father," she replied. "He sent me to wait. He said you'd come." "I didn't promise anyone I'd come." "You didn't have to," the girl said. "He said you'd feel it." Geralt studied her face. Her cheeks were pale, her breath visible in the cold. She spoke with the calm certainty of someone repeating another's words. "Your father's here?" She shook her head. "He's dying. He can't breathe anymore." A flicker of unease stirred in him. "Show me."
The girl led him through the narrow lanes to a house at the edge of the village. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and smoke. A man lay on a cot near the hearth, his chest rising and falling shallowly. Each breath rasped like the hiss of wind through a crack in stone. His skin was gray, his lips dark. Geralt knelt beside him. "How long?" "3 nights," the girl whispered. He said it started with a dream. Someone was calling to him, asking for his breath. Geralt placed a hand over the man's chest. The skin beneath his palm was cold. Not death's chill, but something older, emptier. The air itself seemed to recoil from the man's body. He drew back. "This isn't sickness." The girl's eyes widened. "Can you stop it?" He hesitated. "I'll try." He unpacked his satchel, drawing out vials and powders, setting them carefully by the firelight. He mixed a tincture of wyvern bile and echinopsis root. A potion meant to cleanse the lungs and purge possession. But even as he worked, the man's breathing slowed further, his eyes rolling beneath their lids. Geralt poured the potion between his lips, murmured a spell of warding, and waited. For a moment the man's body stilled, then convulsed violently. The windows burst open, and a gust of air rushed through the room, extinguishing the fire. The girl screamed. Geralt rose, drawing steel. The wind spiraled above the dying man, gathering into a shape, pale, formless, but unmistakable. The wraith hovered, its edges blurring like smoke. Its voice filled the house, soft but everywhere. "You breathe because of me, Witcher." Geralt's jaw tightened. "I killed you." "You carried me," the voice whispered. "You gave me your breath, and I have given it to others. I am no longer a curse bound to stone. I am life itself." He stepped forward, the silver runes on his blade flaring bright. "Then you're still bound to me." The wraith's form pulsed, spreading until the entire room seemed alive with movement. The air grew thick, hard to draw. "Do you still think yourself separate? Every life you've taken, every breath stolen by your blade, fed me. I am what you leave behind." The girl clutched at her father's hand, sobbing. "Stop it, please." Geralt drew the sign of Yrden, slamming it into the floor. The circle flared blue, cutting through the haze. "You talk too much," he growled. The wraith screamed, striking against the ward. The sound shattered the glass of the windows. Geralt advanced, each step deliberate, each motion measured. His sword sang through the air, slicing at the mist. "You can't kill me," it hissed. "You are me." Geralt's eyes narrowed. "Then we die together." He drove the blade into the floor. The runes on his sword blazed white, brighter than the sun. The circle of Yrden expanded, filling the house with light. The wind howled, swirling inward toward the blade, pulling the wraith with it. For a moment Geralt felt his lungs seize, felt the air being torn from him. The pain was blinding, but he held fast, forcing the curse into the steel. The light vanished. Silence fell. Geralt staggered, one hand braced against the wall. The air in the room was still, warm once more. The man on the bed lay quiet, chest rising in slow, steady rhythm. The girl knelt beside him, weeping softly. Geralt straightened, retrieving his sword. The blade's runes no longer glowed, but a faint mist clung to the metal, swirling like breath on glass. He turned to leave. The girl caught his sleeve. "Is it gone?" "For now," he said. She looked up at him through her tears. "You saved him." Geralt shook his head. "I only borrowed time." He stepped outside. The dawn was breaking, pale light spilling over the snow. He could feel it in his chest. The faintest echo, a whisper that wasn't quite his own. When he breathed, the air seemed to pause before answering. He looked down at the sword. The mist along the blade shimmered, then faded. Somewhere far away, thunder rolled across the horizon. Though the sky was clear, Geralt mounted Roach. "Come on, girl," he murmured. "Seems we've got one more road yet." He rode from the village without looking back. Behind him the wind rose, soft and steady, carrying no words this time, only a rhythm. The rhythm of breath, drawn and released, eternal and unending. The curse was gone, or perhaps it lived on in him, quiet, waiting. But for now the world breathed freely again, and so did